I'm installing a 2-inch leveling kit by Skyjacker on this 2020 Sierra 1500 pickup. I'm measuring the ride height before because I'm interested in the before and after. My reference point showed 37 inches. And then I'm going to take off the wheel, gain access to the area, and then I'll be disconnecting the tie rod end, the upper control arm from the spindle, the lower strut mount, which is where the spacer will be installed, as well as disconnecting the sway bar link from the lower control arm. To disconnect the tie rod end, I'll take off the nut, and then I'll need to relieve tension on that joint by breaking the taper. So you smack the spindle and free up that tension and it should pop free. Next, I'll remove the nut from the sway bar link so that when we drop the spindle in the lower control arm, that's not holding anything up there. Then with the 10mm, I'll take out these two bolts that hold this harness in place on the spindle. This is the wheel speed sensor and the brake pad wear indicator. I just don't want to have any strain on that harness when we start disconnecting other things. Taking off the nut for the upper control arm to the spindle, and then lifting the upper control arm to remove it from the spindle. And then there's two bolts that hold the lower strut mount in place. You kind of see everything drop out with that removed last. And then I'm taking off these retaining nuts because they're not required with the new hardware. I didn't loosen the upper strut mount. I was able to manipulate the strut without doing that, and it was less work to me than getting at those nuts with that harness in the way. And then the spacers are the same, left or right, so you can't mix those up. And then I'm installing it there onto the lower strut mount in between the lower control arm. And then I'm manipulating the strut and the lower control arm and putting one bolt through, and then letting that nut support the weight of things so I can manipulate the other one and get it on. The torque specs I'm showing are just a general guideline. When I made this video, I didn't have access to the most recent specs for this new of a pickup, so use your best judgment on that. That's what I'm doing here. The joints themselves are carrying the main steering and vehicle loads, and the nut is just to keep it retained into the joint socket. So I'm just using my best, feel here. I've probably went over tight on most of these, but I'm not too concerned about it. So you're seeing me just reassemble everything here. I'm just lining up that stabilizer link into the socket, into that hole in the lower control arm. Not worried about getting a nut started on it until I drop the vehicle and get the weight of the vehicle on that wheel and helping seat that stabilizer link into the hole. So everything goes back together, put the wheel back on, and then you can see a high-speed version of the other side doing the same thing. When this is all said and done, I took it in and had it aligned, and the only thing that was out from this 2-inch lift was a little bit of inward toe at the front of the tires. The vehicle was about a ½ degree pigeon-toed after this, and camber and caster and everything else were still within spec, so I was really happy with that. Very little adjustment needed in the alignment. And so I also measured the ride height and pretty much perked it up to almost exactly 2 inches. And once it settles a little bit more, I'm sure it'll be down more right at 2 inches. It was just a little bit above 2 inches. You've seen me here put the nuts on those stabilizer links after I dropped the vehicle down. I went ahead and put those nuts on for those and torquing the wheels. And like I said, ride height's a little over 2 inches on the front, like an 1/8 or 3/8 over 2 inches, and in the back it's just over 39, so it's sitting almost exactly level. And I think after driving it some, it'll settle out that front end and it should just be exactly front to rear the same. But I hope you enjoyed this video and that it'll be useful for you as you shop and install your own leveling kit, and I hope you'll like and subscribe.